Recording. Perfect.
Grabando. Listo.
Hello, fellow SerpGuru community. It's Alfredo Saria here, and
Arturo Mesa.
it's been a month now since we started SerpGuru, and we are doing this coffee chat to share with you a little bit about why we're doing this, and hopefully you're gonna join us in our journey as we build in public our new startup. So let me start by first saying that we go way back. Arturo and I, we went to business school together. We went to the University of Michigan. We're fellow Wolverines. We're also fellow Peruvians.
Yep.
And we have worked in many capacities for the past 15 years. But we shared a passion for entrepreneurship. And that's why we are here. So I'll let Arturo introduce himself first, and then I'll talk a little bit about myself later.
Thanks, Alfredo. And yes, you're right. So we've known each other since like 2004 or so when we went to business school. And I think it's been, this year, of course, has been, interesting and a challenge for everyone. And we kind of took the chance this year to reconnect and to reconnect also under a passion that we've kind of both shared, which is, technology and, digital solutions. And this is how we've kind of come back together and put together SerpGuru. We definitely have kind of different professional tracks. I did a lot of consulting, business consulting back in the days, and some technology consulting. And roughly 10 years ago, I kind of started my technology entrepreneurial track after being, a strategy consultant for quite a while. I decided to join, at that point in time, Groupon. Was opening an operation in Latin America, in Peru, and they needed someone to help grow the business. And then I actually launched my own startup, which was an e-commerce based out of the US, fashion e-commerce for women. And we would ship essentially products from the US to Latin America, Peru, Colombia, Chile, Mexico, Dominican Republic, and even Puerto Rico at a certain point in time. So, and since then on, going forward, I've been, in different capacities involved in personal digital projects. And well, this year, as I mentioned before, came together with Alfredo, and after some discussions that we will take a little bit further along, we decided to found SerpGuru. So that's been kind of the ride up until this moment. And I think, why don't you, Alfredo, talk a little bit about your background?
Sure, thanks a lot. So I'm a newbie in the digital marketing space, to be honest, or not as a veteran as Arturo, but I spent the past 15 years working in retail banking. I worked for Citibank and Santander, and then I went to work for MasterCard in payments. I'm managing customers all the way from all over Latin America, including global players, managing issuers, acquirers, merchants. But earlier last year, I was really happy at the company, but I really wanted to try something different at a much faster pace. And I pivoted to fintech. I've been advising financial technology companies for the past year and a half, and it's been a great change of pace. But then this past summer, I think I wanted to help those fintechs and those startups in a different capacity, showing value in them to communicate the value proposition. So what I was talking to Arturo, we were thinking about how can we solve the pain point of the startups that are not so obvious. And for that matter, I mean, everybody, as you probably guys know, are really laser focused on your minimum viable product, your MVP, as well as your go to market and your product market fit and all those great acronyms that we all know. Um, but many times you have all this great idea, you're focused on executing, and you're getting early good results. But sometimes they're not so great. Nobody finds you, you know, you don't get a customer traction. And then when you want to invest on customer acquisition, you don't know where to start. Uh, you don't know how to go about that. When you get solutions in the market, you get this 50-page PDF with a laundry list. But without going into detail, we saw a pain. And we were talking about that. So we started this idea to drive value, to solve the problem, and essentially helping startups with a roadmap, with a clear playbook about customer acquisition in organic channels. So that doesn't become expensive, that it becomes actionable, and you get bang for your buck in a very fast uh, time. I don't know, Arturo, you want to share some light
Yeah,
about that as
yeah,
well?
sure. So kind of to complement what you were saying, um, we actually kind of went through the process of talking with different set of entrepreneurs about and this kind of like early stage entrepreneurs that were developing their MVP, looking for the product market fit, and a lot of the feedback that we got at that point in time is usually, the founders are either like very good at developing a product, and so they are kind of like 100% focused on developing the product, and I think that's actually the right thing to do. But but then you also have a set of founders that are not really sure how to tackle the kind of customer acquisition phase. And in a startup, this kind of happens in a like stage process, right? So when you're trying to validate your MVP, you essentially just need like a very small group of people to test the MVP, and then you go to the kind of next phase to try to scale. But so when you're trying to scale, you need to do that in pretty fast in order to have good metrics. And we found that a lot of the founders were not necessarily knowledgeable or comfortable with the different strategies that you can put in place to acquire new customers. In particular, when you're moving outside of the MVP to the product market fit, and then scaling up. And so I think that kind of brought us a lot of light around the pain that some founders have on how to really have like a clear roadmap and be sure of the steps they need to take to acquire new customers. Because as you were saying, Alfredo, in the beginning, there are a lot of moving pieces, and if you're not sure what you're doing in your customer acquisition strategy, you might think that there is something wrong with your product. That's the reason why people are not necessarily using it, or you're not attracting people. And it might not actually be the case. It might be something related to your customer acquisition strategy. And so I think that is kind of, it's actually pretty important, right? Because your customer acquisition is validating your product. So I think it's it brought us to the conclusion that um, it's a good value proposition for startup teams to focus on developing the product and having a company like SerpGuru help them figure out the best customer acquisition strategy, and also be sure that they're using best practices. And if the feedback of the market is that the product is not, there is not product market fit there yet, that is actually because of the product and not because of the customer acquisition strategy that you're using. So it's also it's kind of very helpful for we see it as a very good value proposition for companies to have that service at their disposal.
Great.
One of the one of I mean the I guess the other insight that we gain through the interview process is the fact that working with early stage startups um, might be a little bit of a challenge in some cases when they are like very early stage, because they don't have like a budget set out to you know to their marketing efforts, right?
Mhm.
And so based on that realization, we've kind of expanded from our what we would call like your regular um, done for you services, like a more of like a marketing agency. Um, we're actually building a do-it-yourself playbook. We are starting with um, what we would call kind of content strategy, customer acquisition, which is has a lot to do with SEO, search engine optimization, how to show up in kind of Google rankings um, and gain traffic organically. And
Mhm.
we're actually doing this for two reasons. The do-it-yourself part is it allows you to actually implement this in a very step-by-step way at your own pace on one side. On the other side, um, it is important that startups acknowledge not only the importance of content strategy today, but the fact that you need to start doing things since the beginning in order for content strategy to pick up when you actually need content strategy to pick up. Um, a lot of entrepreneurs think, oh, SEO is like a long-term play, and in certain ways it is, but it is also true that if you don't start on the right foot and taking the right actions early on, you're not going to be able to activate the full potential of that content strategy when you actually need it. So, we're trying to really, narrow down and focus what is really important for a early stage startup in its first 18 months, what you really need to focus on in terms of your content strategy for it to not only to be helpful in the medium term, but also to be helpful in the short term. So there are definitely actions that you can take to take advantage of your content strategy early on. And so that is kind of the reason behind putting together this do-it-yourself content strategy playbook or SEO playbook.
Yeah, and another insight that we capture from the market, talking to uh, not only entrepreneurs but also to people who are well versed in digital marketing, is that this is a this landscape is changing faster than ever. The major algorithms are changing and being updated more often. You probably know that Google made a major update last week,
Yep.
and that's gonna just keep being faster and faster. So there's a faster implementation of new algorithms. There's new social media platforms coming on board, and there will be more.
Yep.
So being dynamic, being agile, being able to understand what's happening is key. And that's why we think that with our passion for technology, we want to be providing that content. We also know that in the past years, people were focusing on organic, mainly on SEO, and many putting a lot of keywords to get ranked. That has changed dramatically, and we went to a TechCrunch event last fall where we really had very exciting conversations about customer intent and now how the platforms are really trying to understand what the customer wants when they search for something. So those are the key insights that we'll be sharing more in the playbook. So stay tuned for that, and as well as in our community that we are building. And in addition to that, we'll be inviting also fellow colleagues that we shed some light on those uh, on their experiences, uh, what they saw, what they are seeing, how they are seeing the market, but also most importantly, share their expertise and their mindset of how to be uh, nimble, how to be resilient, especially nowadays in the current environment that we are facing.
That's that's great, Alfredo. I think was when you mentioned earlier the point about the constant updates of the algorithms, right? Um, Before you would actually hear about this algorithm updates for Google, right? Those are the ones that are very well known, but you actually have um, algorithmic updates on any platform, and in particular in social media. So you need to essentially be updated on any platform that you're operating right now. And the challenge for startups today is also to define which is the right platform for you. And given the limited resources that you have, which one is probably the one that is going to be the better fit for you at the beginning. Of course, once you grow, once you do your seed round or your Series A, you will have enough cash to to expand to multiple channels. But at the beginning, you really need to be laser focused into what are the you know two or three top channels that are going to give me the greatest bang for my buck, essentially. And and one of the challenges for for founders putting together this customer acquisition strategy with a continuous change in the algorithms, at least from my personal experience, is that, for example, I was trying to learn a lot about, like SEO, which I didn't know too much about, like, 5 years ago, right? And I would be reading something that was written, you know, 2 years before, and I
Mhm.
thought that the recommendations that were mentioned in the video or in the blog post that I was reading were kind of relevant, and I didn't actually know that those particular recommendations were actually updated, and like the algorithm actually banned those type of actions right now. So it is very, very important that you have the ability to understand and keep up to date on those changing algorithms. And then it's the challenge of for the founders initially to have, again, a roadmap that is up to date and that is going to be able to give them the results that they're looking for. And you're not wasting your time surfing on the web and trying to find at the end you find like 7 different articles that some of them contradict themselves between one and the other, and you don't know, which one to trust, right?
Right.
So it is great that you have a lot of information now, but it is also like information overload, and sometimes it's, you're not looking at the best recommendations.
Absolutely. I mean, something that pretty much everybody might be experiencing now is that we have so much information and data at our fingertips, and not spending so much time at home that you may end up with 20 tabs open on your laptop or 10 screens open on your smartphone. And to Arturo's point about which channel to go after first, I mean, you don't know where to start. You don't know how to go about that. Should I be on every single one? Should I be on one? An example from us. So SerpGuru, we have chosen two platforms to begin with now three. But the first one was Twitter. So we know that Twitter is a great source of news, quick updates in 280 characters now. You can put key information and follow trends as they happen, and they can become viral really, really quick. So we started with a Twitter account, but also we wanted to build a community. So we want to have a community of like-minded folks who wanna have access to our created content. So that's how we started also a Facebook community, and you'll see the links to join them on this video or on the page. And now, what's next? What's next is what makes sense for us, and in your case, it will be what makes sense for you. Where's the platform where you have your more inclination to be part of,
Mm-hmm.
or what your customers are, because what you want to have is you want to be as close to your customers as possible. And a key insight that Arturo mentioned earlier too was we've been talking to our personas, our target customer many times, and we've had to go back to the drawing board a couple of times, but essentially is rich information to know not what they want, because there's a phrase that Henry Ford said: "If I ask my customers what they want, they would have probably said faster horses." And
Yeah.
you know what happened. You are gonna get a information you can then package, combine, validate, and then build something that actually works and that solves that problem, as opposed to just throwing out an example from the corporate life, a credit card product that is just, a me too play, so to speak.
That's yeah, that's totally true. And there is definitely a learning process. There are definitely criterias that you should follow depending on the type of product or service that you are developing in order to choose the right channel. But it also depends on the strategy that you are trying to build around your product and around your customer acquisition. Um, and you might be trying to have like very like short-term goals, but also map around what are you trying to do in like the medium term. So for example, if we again put ourselves as an example, um, for us at SerpGuru, we see Twitter as a platform that allows us to build a a community, or a sounding, more than a community, like a sounding board and an access to um, people that are in the same industry, but also very close to our clients or potential clients in a shorter period of time. Facebook community and the community that we want to build there, given the characteristics of Facebook groups and what you can do there, it's actually a lot better to have to develop longer term communities. So we actually want to have you know, more or less kind of our clients or the people that are going to buy the do-it-yourself SEO playbook be in that community, share share more more in-depth value within that community. Also because the platform allows you to share different content in a different way, and it's definitely easier to share like longer type of content there. So you need to wait, right? And have a strategy around where is my short-term impact, but also how am I going to build something for the medium term, but starting right now. Um, an important piece to that is content creation, whether it is like we're doing right now, video, um, you know, written content, podcast or audio. Um, you really need to think very, very well. Um, how do you want to structure your content creation to take as much value and as much advantage of it um, when you execute it? And I think it's for the people that are going to start following us. Um, I think it's going to be interesting because we wanna put ourselves as an example on how you can take advantage of creating content and using it in different platforms. But for example, us right now, we're doing a video, uh, but we're also kind of planning on putting this just like out there as a podcast, not only our conversations, but the interviews that we're doing with our fellow entrepreneurs. And part of that content can also be transcribed to text, and so we might be able to share that in written content, either through social media or writing a blog post around a particular topic that maybe we have talked in this particular call. So that is another important aspect around your customer acquisition strategy, because a lot of times founders are thinking like, oh, but I cannot do Twitter and Facebook and like video and all of these 5 different channels, because I'm thinking of the content as being like exclusively created for each channel. And
Mhm.
you need to understand, but you also need to be very strategic on how you're going to create that content and how can you actually leverage um, the same pieces of content through different channels, so you actually get the highest ROI over a single piece of content that you've created.
And that's a great point. Drawing back from previous slides, I always try to find a way to know how I can reach my customer, whether it's my boss, my colleague, my peer, or the end consumer. And sometimes was an email, sometimes was a phone call, sometimes was a text
Mm-hmm.
to get a hold of. Sometimes was just showing up at that person's desk, right? So in this case, as Arturo is saying, technology allow us to repurpose content in many different forms. So a video can become an audio, can become a text, because what you want to have is you want to have customers' attention. You want to have your customer to understand what you're saying. Then you want them to remember what you said. They may not remember the 100% of what you said, but at least a key punchline of what you are communicating.
Mm-hmm.
And ultimately, you want them to share it. You want them to engage. You want to ask you questions. You want to challenge you, or you want to say, hey, you guys should take a look at what SerpGuru is doing. These guys are onto something. Or whoever you think is a reference point in your industry or your market. So just about thinking in terms of what I want to achieve, how I want to communicate, and what I want to say. Um, and again, there's never been there's never been so much content. You probably can Google SEO, digital marketing, startups, and you can get millions and millions of hits with a 10, 20, 40 formulas. It's about how you can get grounded, trained on the steps, the logical steps for you to drive that acquisition strategy. Not only to get likes or to get views, but also to get actual users of your product, paid users of your product, and ultimately driving down your acquisition cost, which is at the end of the day, impact to the bottom line.
Yeah, that's very good, Alfredo. I was picking up on the last part that you talk about, like the customer acquisition costs, and I was mentioning at the beginning this, that depending on the stage that you're on your startup, um, you actually are going to have certain growth demands, right? So MVP, while you're testing the product, you can test the product or your MVP with, 50 people. Depends on what you're developing, of course. But then you're trying to get to like product market fit, then you're talking about, 10x that or 20x that, right? So you are now at 500 or 2,000 customers, depending on what it is um, that you are testing. And then once you get out of that and you're trying to scale, then only at that point in time, once you are moving out, once you have your kind of product market fit and you're trying to scale, is when you realize that your your acquisition costs start to skyrocket, right? Potentially at that point in time, you have you had your seed round or you had your series A or a pre-series A fundraising, right? And now you have the money to put, essentially a lot of gasoline into the tank to really, grow faster. But you start realizing very quickly that your acquisition costs also starts to go up very, very fast. And, in order to be able to confront that situation, you need to have started a little bit earlier on these areas that we were talking about, right? Whether it's, written content or visual content, social media, things of that nature. Because definitely the short-term strategy to gain customer acquisitions is through paid ads. But paid ads at the beginning are super expensive because you as a company are not known, so your conversion rates tend to be a lot lower, and you're actually bidding normally against companies that have a bigger budget, right? So it's at that point in time where you're trying to scale it and you're starting to see your customer acquisition costs go up, and so it is definitely extremely helpful to be able to have your organic strategy and your paid ad strategy kind of both very well laid out, so you actually have a more reasonable acquisition cost, and that can actually become a very good selling point towards your next round of funding, because the next round of funding is going to come out of your growth, um, how fast are you acquiring your customers, and your economics. And your economics are extremely dependent on how much does it cost for you to add a new customer to your um, to buy your product. So it makes a lot of sense to um, start low but slow, but strategically, and um, developing both on parallel your paid ads and your organic strategy.
Yeah, and that's a very good point, because at the end of the day, there's no one size fits all again. It's about having that strategy laid out, um, knowing when to start, but knowing how to start, and start early, because the most important thing is starting early so you can build the authority early on, because those things take time, and we wouldn't want you miss great opportunities by leaving that opportunity on the table by not starting early. So that's how we're that's again why we're doing this, um, and we're building this in public. You'll see us. You're probably gonna start seeing more communication from us, um, sharing what we're doing, and we'd love for you guys to join us in that journey, uh, engage with us, what you like, what you don't like, and partner with us, so that we ultimately help uh, the community grow. And we mean this. We were fortunate of joining the Y Combinator Startup School this year, which is now an ongoing effort, great effort, and that helped us navigate, not only navigate, but also most importantly, engage with fellow entrepreneurs, users, uh, to validate the needs. So more to come. These are early days. We'll be doing this. You'll see us interviewing people who will bring a lot of expertise on their journeys, on their successes, on their failures, what they learn from them, but also tips and insights as far as how they have built resilience, how they have gone about customer acquisition, and then different styles. So stay tuned, follow us, and engage.
That's great. So just to kind of finish this video, I think the building public effort, it's a great way for you guys to really ask um, what you want to know, but also suggest what you would like us to tell you about, and what questions do you have. So the interviews that we're setting up with entrepreneurs, they're not just marketing focused, how all of the strategies and hacks around customer customer acquisition, um, but it's also about the journey, right? It's also about how you can manage your startup. We're viewing this as an just kind of an integral part of a bigger process, which is essentially becoming successful with your startup. And for that, you don't only need your kind of technical background or know how to do your marketing, but also just learn from fellow entrepreneurs, their successes, their failures, what works for them, what didn't. So we really hope that you enjoy this series of videos, and wish you the best, and we'll be in contact soon. Take
Till
care.
next time.
See you next time. Bye bye.